The crystal chandelier above cast fragments of light across the grand ballroom, each beam catching on another piece of overpriced jewelry worn by guests I'd never met. I stood at the entrance of the Whitmore estate, my wife Sarah's hand warm in mine, while our 8-year-old daughter Emma tugged at my suit jacket. "Daddy, why does everyone look so fancy?" Emma whispered, her eyes wide as she took in the spectacle before us. I squeezed her shoulder gently. "It's Uncle Aiden's engagement party, sweetheart. People like to dress up for these things." What I didn't tell her was that this was my first family event in 3 years. The invitation had arrived 2 weeks ago, a pristine white envelope with gold embossing that Sarah had found wedged under our apartment door rather than properly mailed. My younger brother Aiden was getting married to Victoria Whitmore, daughter of Thomas Whitmore, one of the city's most prominent real estate moguls. "Luke," a familiar voice called out, and I turned to see my brother approaching. Aiden looked different, his usual casual demeanor replaced by something stiffer, more calculated. His designer suit probably cost more than most people's monthly salary, and the smile on his face didn't quite reach his eyes. "Aiden," I nodded, pulling him into a brief hug that felt more obligatory than warm. "Congratulations on the engagement." He glanced at Sarah and Emma, his expression shifting to something I couldn't quite read. "Thanks for coming. I wasn't sure you would." "Family's family," I said, though the words tasted bitter on my tongue. Behind Aiden, I caught sight of our parents. Mom was draped in a burgundy dress that screamed money she didn't have, while Dad stood rigid in his rented tuxedo, both of them actively avoiding eye contact with me. 3 years. 3 years since they'd last acknowledged my existence, and here we were, pretending everything was normal for the sake of appearances. "The ceremony's about to start," Aiden said quickly. "There's assigned seating you're at." He pulled out his phone, scrolling through something. "Table 12. "Table 12? Sarah repeated, her tone neutral, but her grip on my hand tightening slightly. "Yeah, it's over there." He gestured vaguely toward the back of the room, far from the main stage where the engagement announcement would happen. As we made our way through the crowd, I noticed the looks. Some guests whispered behind manicured hands, others simply stared with barely concealed curiosity. The infamous Luke Harrison, black sheep of the Harrison family, had actually shown up. Table 12 was exactly where I expected it to be, tucked away in the corner, partially hidden behind a decorative pillar that blocked most of the view to the main stage. The other tables nearby were empty, creating an island of isolation in the sea of celebration. "This is deliberate," Sarah murmured as we took our seats, her journalist instincts picking up on what I'd already figured out. "Of course it is," I replied, helping Emma into her chair. "Can't have the family disappointment mixing with the Whitmore elite." The tablecloth was the same pristine white as the others, the centerpiece just as elaborate, but the message was clear. We were here as a courtesy, nothing more. I watched as other guests found their seats, business partners at table 2, family friends at table 3, and there, at the grand table 1, sat Thomas Whitmore himself. He was exactly as the business magazines portrayed him, silver-haired, sharp-featured, with the kind of presence that commanded attention without effort. His wife, a perfectly preserved woman in her 50s, sat beside him, and next to her was Victoria, my soon-to-be sister-in-law. Victoria was beautiful in that carefully constructed way, every hair in place, makeup flawless, smile practiced. She looked at my brother like he was a prize she'd won at auction. "Ladies and gentlemen," a voice boomed over the speakers, "please welcome our happy couple, Aiden Harrison and Victoria Whitmore." The room erupted in applause as Aiden and Victoria took the stage. From our corner, I could barely see them past the pillar, but I could hear everything clearly enough. "Thank you all for being here," Victoria's voice rang out, sweet as poisoned honey. "This means the world to us, having our loved ones here to celebrate." Loved ones. I almost laughed at the irony. The evening progressed with the typical pageantry, speeches about love and destiny, toasts to the happy couple, and enough champagne to fill a swimming pool. Emma was getting restless, and I couldn't blame her. We'd been here 2 hours, and not a single person had approached our table except the waitstaff. Then I heard it, my name carried on a laugh from a nearby table. "Can you believe Luke actually showed up?" The voice belonged to my cousin Marcus, someone I'd once considered a friend. "After everything that happened, you'd think he'd have the sense to stay away." "What happened?" another voice asked. "Oh, you don't know? Luke here thought he was too good for the family business, wanted to make it on his own or some nonsense, left his parents high and dry when they needed him most. Now look at him, probably can barely afford the gas to get here." My jaw clenched, but Sarah's hand found mine under the table. "Don't," she whispered, "they're not worth it." But the conversation continued, each word deliberately loud enough for us to hear. "I heard he's working some dead-end corporate job now," Marcus continued. Meanwhile, Aiden stepped up, took care of the family. No wonder they're at the kiddie table. The kiddie table comment stung more than I cared to admit, especially with Emma sitting right there, her face falling as she began to understand we weren't welcome here. I was about to stand up, to say something, when Thomas Whitmore himself approached the microphone again. "Before we continue with the festivities," he said, his voice carrying that particular tone of someone used to being heard and obeyed, "I want to say a few words about family." My stomach turned. Somehow, I knew this wasn't going to be good. "Family," Thomas continued, "is about loyalty. It's about knowing your place in the grand scheme of things. Some people understand this innately." His eyes found Aiden in the crowd. Aiden, for instance, has shown remarkable dedication to his family's welfare. He understood that success isn't just about personal ambition, it's about lifting up those around you. There was pointed applause, and I saw my parents beaming with pride. Mom actually had tears in her eyes. And then, Thomas's voice took on a different quality. "There are those who forget where they came from, who think they're above the very people who raised them, who choose their own pride over family obligation." He wasn't looking at me. He didn't need to. Everyone in the room knew exactly who he was talking about. The whispers started again, a low hum of gossip and speculation. But tonight isn't about dwelling on disappointments, Thomas concluded with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Tonight is about celebrating those who understand the value of family loyalty. To Aiden and Victoria, the room erupted in cheers and applause. I sat frozen, my hands clenched so tight my knuckles were white. Sarah was saying something, but I couldn't hear her over the roaring in my ears. Emma looked confused and hurt, not understanding why people were being mean to her daddy. That's when I saw him, Thomas Whitmore, making his way through the crowd, stopping at various tables to accept congratulations and shake hands. He was working his way around the room, and his path would eventually lead him to us. When he finally arrived at table 12, he paused, looking down at us with an expression of mock surprise. "Oh, Luke, I didn't realize you were here." The lie was so transparent, it was almost insulting. "How nice of you to come support your brother, Mr. Whitmore," I said, standing to meet his gaze. We were roughly the same height, but he had a way of looking at people that made them feel small. "I hope you're enjoying the party," he continued, his tone conversational but his eyes cold, "though I imagine this must be quite different from what you're used to these days. Tell me, what is it you do again? Something with computers?" "I work in technology consulting," I replied evenly. "Ah, yes, consulting." He said the word like it left a bad taste in his mouth. "Well, we can't all be entrepreneurs, can we? Some people are meant to work for others. There's no shame in that." The condescension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Several people at nearby tables had stopped their conversations to watch our interaction. "You know, Luke," Thomas continued, his voice carrying just enough for our audience to hear clearly, "I've always admired people who know their limitations. It takes a certain kind of wisdom to accept one's place in the world." Sarah stood up beside me, her face flushed with anger, but I gently touched her arm. "This was my fight." "And what place would that be, Mr. Whitmore?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. He chuckled, a sound devoid of warmth. "Well, clearly not at the head table. But don't worry. We made sure you had seats. That's what family does, after all. We take care of our own, even the—" He paused, searching for the word, "disappointing ones." "Daddy," Emma's small voice cut through the tension. She was standing now, looking up at Thomas Whitmore with those big brown eyes of hers. "Why are you being mean to my daddy?" The room seemed to hold its breath. Thomas looked down at Emma, and for a moment his mask slipped. Then he smiled, that practiced politician's smile. "I'm not being mean, little one. Adults sometimes have complicated conversations. You wouldn't understand." "I understand plenty," Emma said, her chin jutting out defiantly. "My daddy taught me that being mean is wrong, no matter how old you are." Thomas's smile tightened. "Your father should have taught you not to interrupt adult conversations." That was it. That was the line. "Don't speak to my daughter that way," I said, my voice low but firm. "Or what?" Thomas challenged, his veneer of civility finally cracking. "What exactly are you going to do, Luke? You walked away from your family when they needed you most. You left your parents to struggle while you pursued your little dreams. And now you show up here, at my daughter's engagement party, sitting at the table we graciously provided, and you have the audacity to tell me how to speak?" The entire room was watching now. Even the waitstaff had stopped moving. I could see Aiden on the stage, his face pale, Victoria whispering urgently in his ear. My parents sat at their table, my mother's hands covering her mouth, my father's expression unreadable. "You know what your problem is, Luke?" Thomas continued, emboldened by the audience. "You never learned the fundamental rule of success. It's not what you know, it's who you know. And you? You know nobody. You are nobody. A consultant." He practically spat the word. "Do you have any idea who I am? What I could do to you with a single phone call?" I felt Sarah tense beside me, saw Emma's eyes fill with tears, and in that moment, something inside me shifted. For 3 years, I'd carried the weight of my family's disappointment, accepted their version of events, believed maybe I was the selfish one for choosing my own path. But standing here, being humiliated in front of my wife and daughter, watching this man tear me down for sport, I realized something. Thomas Whitmore had no idea who I really was. "You're right, Mr. Whitmore," I said quietly. "It is about who you know." I pulled out my phone, ignoring the confused looks around me. Thomas watched with amusement as I scrolled through my contacts. "What are you doing?" he asked, clearly entertained. "Calling for a ride home?" "No," I said, finding the number I was looking for. "I'm making a business call." I put the phone on speaker so everyone could hear. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered. "Luke, I wasn't expecting to hear from you on a Saturday evening. Everything all right?" "Hello, James," I said, my eyes never leaving Thomas's face. "I'm sorry to bother you during your family time." "Nonsense. You know you can call me anytime. What's going on?" Thomas's amusement was fading, replaced by confusion. Several guests had pulled out their phones, some recording, others texting furiously. "I need you to pull up the Whitmore Group file," I said calmly. There was a pause. "The Whitmore Group? Luke, that's the acquisition we've been working on for 8 months. The board meeting is Monday. Why?" "James," I interrupted, "I need you to cancel it." The silence in the ballroom was deafening. Thomas's face had gone from confused to pale. "Cancel it?" James's voice carried clearly through the speaker. "Luke, we're talking about a $7.2 million deal. The integration of their retail properties into our portfolio is—" "I'm aware of what it is," I said. "Cancel it." "May I ask why?" I looked directly at Thomas Whitmore, whose mouth was opening and closing like a fish out of water, irreconcilable differences in company culture and values. "We don't do business with people who don't align with our ethics." "Understood. I'll notify legal immediately. The Whitmore Group will receive formal notice of withdrawal first thing Monday morning." "Thank you, James." "Of course. Oh, and Luke, the Singapore branch called earlier. They're hoping you can fly out next month for the expansion meeting. We'll discuss it Monday." "Sounds good. Enjoy your evening, CEO Harrison." The title hung in the air like a bomb that had just detonated. CEO Harrison, not consultant, not nobody, CEO. I ended the call and slipped my phone back into my pocket. The ballroom was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. You're... Thomas started, his voice hoarse. You're the CEO of Next Gen Technologies? Guilty, I said simply. Next Gen Technologies, the company that had appeared seemingly out of nowhere 3 years ago and had since become one of the fastest growing tech firms in the country. The company that Thomas Whitmore had spent 8 months courting for this acquisition. The company that was about to save his struggling retail empire from bankruptcy, a fact not widely known but something I'd discovered during our due diligence. This is a joke, Thomas stammered, but the fear in his eyes said he knew it wasn't. You can't be. The CEO of Next Gen is supposed to be some reclusive genius who values privacy and doesn't plaster his face all over business magazines, I finished. Yes, that would be me. The whispers started immediately, rippling through the crowd like wildfire. Phones were out everywhere now, people Googling, searching, trying to verify what they'd just heard. I saw Marcus, my cousin who'd been mocking me earlier, staring at his phone screen with his mouth hanging open. Luke, my mother's voice cut through the chaos. She and my father had stood up from their table, making their way over. What is this? What are you talking about? I turned to face them, these people who had shut me out of their lives because I wouldn't take over the family hardware store, who had accused me of being selfish and abandoning them when I chose to pursue my own path. It's exactly what it sounds like, Mom. 3 years ago when I left, I started my own company, the dead-end corporate job everyone's been laughing about. I was building something big. But my father's voice was weak. You never said anything. You never told us. When would I have told you? I asked, and for the first time tonight, I let the hurt show in my voice. During the past 3 years when you refused to take my calls, when you returned every letter unopened, when you told the entire family I was dead to you? My mother's eyes filled with tears. We thought. Aiden told us you were struggling, that you were too proud to admit you'd made a mistake. I looked across the room at my brother, who was standing frozen on the stage, Victoria still clutching his arm. Aiden knew exactly what I was doing. He's known for 2 years. The crowd gasped collectively. All eyes turned to Aiden, who looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. I didn't... Aiden started, but his voice failed him. You didn't what? I asked, walking closer to the stage. You didn't know I'd offered to help with Dad's store financially? You didn't know I'd tried to include you in my company when it started taking off? You didn't know I'd sent Mom and Dad a check every month for 2 years? Checks that were always returned? Thomas Whitmore found his voice again, though it was notably less confident than before. This doesn't change anything. You can't just cancel a deal because of a personal dispute. There are contracts. Actually, I can, I interrupted. The contracts haven't been signed yet. That was supposed to happen Monday, remember? Your lawyers were very insistent on that date because you needed the capital injection by the end of the month to avoid defaulting on your loans. The color drained from his face completely. That information wasn't public. Only someone with access to the deepest levels of due diligence would know about Whitmore Group's financial troubles. How dare you? Thomas snarled, his composure finally cracking completely. You think you can come into my house, humiliate me in front of my guests? Humiliate you? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. I sat at that table in the corner, listening to you and everyone else tear me down for the past 2 hours. You insulted me in front of my wife and made my daughter cry, and you want to talk about humiliation? Victoria finally spoke up, her voice shrill. Aiden, do something! Your brother is ruining everything! Aiden looked between Victoria and me, his face a battlefield of emotions. Luke, please, don't do this. Not here, not now. Then when, Aiden? I asked. When is the right time to stand up for myself? When is the right time to tell the truth? The truth? My father stepped forward, his face red with anger or shame. I couldn't tell which. The truth is you abandoned us. No, I said firmly. The truth is I refused to be trapped in a life I didn't want. The truth is I had bigger dreams than running a hardware store that was already failing. The truth is I offered to help in my own way, but you wanted control more than you wanted help. That store was our legacy, Dad shouted. That store was a chain around our necks, I shouted back, years of frustration finally boiling over. It was bleeding money, Dad. You knew it, I knew it, everyone knew it, but instead of letting me help you transition to something else, you demanded I sacrifice my future to go down with the ship. So you just left, Mom said quietly, tears streaming down her face. I left after you told me I was no longer your son if I didn't take over the store, I reminded her. Those were your exact words. You made the choice, not me. The crowd was eating this up, the high society drama better than anything they could have paid to see, but I was past caring about appearances. Thomas tried to regain control of the situation. This is a private family matter. Perhaps we should... Private? I turned on him. You made it public the moment you decided to humiliate me in front of everyone. You wanted to make an example of me, to show everyone what happens to people who don't know their place. Well, congratulations, Mr. Whitmore. You've succeeded in showing everyone exactly what kind of man you are. You're making a mistake, Thomas threatened. I have connections you can't imagine. I'll destroy your little company. With what money? I asked bluntly. We both know you need this deal more than I do. Without it, Whitmore Group won't last 6 months. Victoria gasped. Daddy, what is he talking about? Thomas's face went from pale to purple. Nothing, sweetheart. He's lying. I have the financial statements to prove it, I said. But don't worry, I won't share them publicly. Unlike you, I don't find joy in humiliating people. I'm simply choosing not to do business with you. Sarah stepped forward, Emma's hand in hers. Luke, I think we should go. She was right. I'd said what I needed to say, done what I needed to do. But as we started to leave, Aiden finally found his voice. Wait! He jumped down from the stage, rushing toward us. Luke, please! I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I stopped, turning to face my younger brother. Sorry for what exactly? For lying to our parents about my situation? For letting them think I was a failure? For sitting silent while everyone mocked me tonight? All of it, Aiden said, and to his credit, he looked genuinely remorseful. I was jealous. You got out, you made something of yourself. And I was stuck, trying to be the good son, trying to save Dad's business, trying to make everyone happy. So you threw me under the bus. I didn't mean for it to go this far, he said desperately. It started small. Mom and Dad were so angry when you left, and I let them think what they wanted to think. And then when you started succeeding, I couldn't tell them the truth. They'd already mourned you like you were dead. How could I tell them their dead son was actually thriving? You could have tried the truth, Sarah said coldly. It's actually quite simple. Victoria appeared at Aiden's side, grabbing his arm. Aiden, what are you doing? Don't apologize to him. He's trying to ruin our wedding. No, Aiden said, shaking her off. He's trying to protect his family, something I should have done a long time ago. If you side with him, Victoria threatened, the wedding is off. Aiden looked at her, really looked at her, maybe for the first time. Is that what our marriage is going to be? Threats and ultimatums? Don't be dramatic, Thomas interjected. Your brother is clearly having some sort of breakdown. Security! 2 security guards appeared, moving toward us. But before they could reach us, another voice rang out. Touch my son and I'll sue you into oblivion. Everyone turned. There, in the doorway, stood Margaret Chen, one of the city's most renowned corporate lawyers and, incidentally, my company's legal counsel. She walked in with the confidence of someone who had never lost a case, her presence immediately commanding respect. Mrs. Chen, Thomas stammered. What are you doing here? I'm here at the request of my client, she said smoothly. Mr. Harrison called me on his way here tonight, suspecting there might be some unpleasantness. Good thing, too. I've been recording everything from the doorway for the past 20 minutes. Defamation, harassment, intentional infliction of emotional distress. Shall I go on? The security guards immediately backed off. This is ridiculous, Thomas blustered, but the fight was leaving him. You can't threaten me in my own home. I'm not threatening anyone, Margaret said calmly. I'm simply informing you of potential legal consequences should this escalate further. Mr. Harrison and his family will be leaving now peacefully. But my mother stepped forward. No, wait, please. She looked at me with eyes full of tears and regret. Luke, we were wrong. We were so wrong. Yes, you were, I said simply. There was no point in sugarcoating it. Can you ever forgive us? She asked. I looked at her, at my father, who seemed to have aged 10 years in the past 10 minutes, at Aiden, who stood separate from Victoria now, looking lost. I don't know, I said honestly. You didn't just cut me off. You turned the entire family against me. You made me the villain in a story where I was just trying to live my own life. Do you have any idea what that's been like? What it's been like for Sarah, for Emma? Emma tugged on my hand. Daddy, the lady is crying. I looked down at my daughter, this precious girl who had watched her father be humiliated tonight, who had stood up to a grown man 3 times her size to defend me. I know, sweetheart. Maybe she's really sorry, Emma said in that simple, honest way children have. You always tell me that when someone is really sorry, we should try to forgive them. Out of the mouths of babes. Can we talk? Dad finally spoke, his voice rough. Not here, not now, but... Can we talk? Really talk? I was about to answer when Thomas made one last desperate play. If you walk out that door, he said to Aiden, you're finished. The job at my company, the apartment, the car, all gone. You'll have nothing. Aiden looked at Thomas, then at Victoria, who was nodding in agreement with her father. Then he looked at me. I already have nothing, Aiden said quietly. Nothing that matters anyway. He walked over to us, stopping in front of Emma. Hey kiddo, I'm sorry about tonight. Your dad is a good man, the best. I forgot that for a while, but I remember now. Emma studied him seriously. Are you going to be nice to my daddy from now on? I'm going to try, Aiden promised. Aiden, Victoria shrieked. If you leave with them, we're done. Aiden pulled off the engagement ring from his finger. Yes, they'd done matching engagement rings, which should have been my first red flag about Victoria. He set it on the nearest table. Then we're done, he said simply. The room erupted in chaos. Guests were talking over each other, phones were ringing, and Thomas was shouting something about lawsuits and contracts, but I wasn't listening anymore. I was walking out with my family, my real family, Sarah on one side, Emma between us, and surprisingly, Aiden on my other side. The cool night air hit us as we exited the Whitmore estate. Behind us, we could still hear the commotion, but it felt distant now, like something from another life. Where will you go? I asked Aiden as we reached our car. He laughed, but it was hollow. I have no idea. Thomas was right. Everything I have is tied to them. The job, the apartment, even my car is a company lease. Sarah and I exchanged a look. She nodded slightly. You'll come home with us tonight, I said. We have a guest room. Tomorrow we'll figure out the rest. Luke, I can't... Yes, you can, I interrupted. That's what real family does. Margaret Chen approached us, her heels clicking on the pavement. Well, that was certainly entertaining. Luke, I'll need you to come by the office Monday to discuss the Whitmore situation. I assume you want to make the withdrawal official? Absolutely, I confirmed. Good. And Mr. Harrison, she turned to Aiden, if you need legal counsel regarding any employment or property disputes with the Whitmores, I'd be happy to recommend someone. Thank you, Aiden said, still looking stunned. As Margaret left, my parents approached hesitantly. They looked older, smaller somehow, as if the evening's revelations had physically diminished them. Luke, Mom started, then stopped, unsure what to say. I meant what I said inside, I told them. I don't know if I can forgive you. Not yet, maybe not ever completely, but... I looked at Emma, who was watching everything with those wise eyes of hers, but I'm willing to try. For her, if nothing else. She deserves to know her grandparents. We'd like that, Dad said roughly. We'd like to know her, and you, the real you, not the version we created in our heads. It won't be easy, I warned. There's a lot of hurt to work through. We know, Mom said. We have a lot to make up for, not just to you, but to Sarah, and especially to Emma. Emma stepped forward. Are you really my grandma and grandpa? We are, sweetheart, Mom said, fresh tears starting. We've been very silly and stayed away for too long. That's okay, Emma said generously. Daddy says everyone makes mistakes. The important thing is to learn from them. Over the next few weeks, everything changed. Thomas Whitmore tried to salvage the deal, even going so far as to show up at my office with a team of lawyers. But the damage was done. Word had gotten out about both the failed acquisition and Whitmore Group's financial troubles. Within 3 months, they filed for bankruptcy. Victoria tried to win Aiden back, but he wasn't interested. He'd seen her true colors that night, and there was no going back. He started working at my company, not any executive position. He insisted on earning his way up, but in our business development department where his natural charm and people skills actually served him well. My parents and I began the slow process of rebuilding. It wasn't easy. There were therapy sessions, difficult conversations, and more than a few setbacks. But gradually, we found our way to something new. Not the relationship we'd had before, that was gone forever, but something different, something more honest. The hardware store eventually closed, but instead of it being a source of shame, Dad finally admitted he was relieved. He started consulting for small businesses, using his decades of experience to help others avoid the mistakes he'd made. Mom volunteered at a local literacy program and finally seemed to find genuine happiness. 6 months after that disastrous engagement party, Aiden met someone new, a teacher named Grace who couldn't care less about money or status. Their wedding, a year later, was small, intimate, and genuine. Only 20 guests, held in Grace's parents' backyard. I was his best man. During my toast, I said something that I think summarized everything we'd been through. Family isn't about blood or obligation or maintaining appearances. It's about choosing to show up for each other, especially when it's hard. It's about truth, even when it hurts, and it's about forgiveness, even when it seems impossible. Aiden and I lost our way for a while, but we found our way back, not to where we started, but to somewhere better, somewhere real. Thomas Whitmore was at that wedding, of course, not as a guest, but as a cautionary tale we sometimes mentioned. Last I heard, he was working as a real estate agent for a small firm in the suburbs. Victoria married some hedge fund manager and moved to Connecticut. I don't think Aiden ever heard from her again. As for me, Next Gen continued to grow. We went public 2 years later, and yes, I made sure my face was on the cover of those business magazines Thomas Whitmore had once lorded over me. Not out of spite, but because I'd earned it. I'd built something from nothing, without connections, without family money, without compromising my values. Emma, now 11, sometimes asks about that night at the engagement party. She remembers it as the night everything changed, the night our family grew bigger and more complicated, but also more honest. She's right. It was the night I stopped apologizing for who I was and what I'd achieved. It was the night the truth finally came out. And despite all the pain and drama it caused, I wouldn't change a thing, because sometimes the only way to build something real is to tear down the facade first. Sometimes the only way to find your real family is to stand up to the fake one. And sometimes the best response to someone telling you to know your place is to show them that you already do, and it's probably not where they think it is.